Football is a violent sport, but there are some players who take it too far. These dirty players just can't help themselves. For a select few, it's part of their game.
Yeah, it was probably one of the dirtier plays I've ever seen, especially with my own eyes.
Their actions have ended careers. One guy even announced to the whole league what dirty plays he was going to make. There's been a ton of these players in the NFL, but who are the dirtiest of all time? The Pittsburgh defense is notorious for being hard-nosed, but it was on offense that they had one of their most violent players. Hines Ward, the big-bodied receiver, made some big blocks in his day. He was known for blindsiding opponents whenever he got the chance.
Fake again to Meriweather Moore. He got right by the oncoming rush. The blitz was on.
But it was before this type of hit was illegal. Ward used to hunt down defenders and smash into them with everything he had. He left more people woozy and struggling to get on their feet than a half bottle of tequila. Eventually, the league realized this type of play was dangerous, so they updated the rules, implementing what is literally called the Hines Ward rule, saying a player cannot use their head, shoulder, or forearm to make contact with a player's head or neck when making a blindside block. If you get a rule named after you, then you know you've been playing dirty. But it's nothing like having your own hit list like the next one. He is a lesser-known defensive player from the 80s, partially because he had a short career. But Charles Martin still made his presence felt in quite a literal sense.
You can see the ball is gone, and here's McMahon standing there. Here comes Martin.
Ball is long gone.
What is this?
Wow, man,
that's ridiculous. He should be out of the game.
Not only was that the latest late hit in NFL history, Martin also became the first NFL player to get ejected for a violent act, not part of gameplay, and the first player to receive a multi-game suspension for an on-field incident. That hit also ended Jim McMahon's season. Martin was out for blood. He played for the Packers for several years, and in pre-game warm-ups, he'd wear a towel with the names of several Bears players on it. It was his hit list. One of those names was Jim McMahon, so clearly he got his target. At least these dirty hits looked like football plays, unlike the next player who seemed to be inspired from that European football. Meet the NFL's dirtiest kicker.
And with Hansen hurt, Suh attempting the extra point. And he bangs it off the upright.
The kick is actually pretty good, except you see just smooth motion.
But it certainly wasn't all about his field goal kicking skills. People's helmets had a nasty habit of popping off whenever Ndamukong Suh was tackling them. You can see as their heads get in the way of where he's kicking his feet. There was the time a Packers offensive lineman got his whole body in the way of where Suh was going to stop. And during a Thanksgiving game when Matt Schaub got his drumstick in the way of a Suh flying kick. Suh was already dominant as a defensive end, but he just couldn't resist going that extra mile. Dirty hits on greats like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers.
Stepped on right at the end of that play. I didn't catch that, and looks like maybe that's what it was. Twice he gets stepped on. That's Suh.
You can see Suh intentionally putting all his weight on Rodgers' leg, all 313 pounds of him. In his career, Suh has been fined over $516,000. That's including a $100,000 fine, all in one pop, as he made an illegal low block on Viking center John Sullivan and injured him on an interception return. At least he didn't announce his dirty plays ahead of time. Dirty helmet-to-helmet hits are one thing, and that's one thing Brandon Meriweather did a lot of. He was known as a headhunter, a successful one at that, but it's what happened after his repeated use of his helmet which took it to another level. The league had a big problem with Meriweather as they were trying to prevent serious injuries. His hits even became the focus of several segments.
My word of the week in Week 7 is suspension. And Brandon Meriweather, it's you I'm talking about.
Meriweather was suspended for a game in 2013 for a helmet-to-helmet hit. And in response, he said, "I guess I just gotta take people's knees out." He added, "You just have to go low now, man. You've got to end people's careers. You've got to tear people's ACLs and mess up people's knees. You can't hit them high anymore." Well, at least he let the refs know what to look out for. Meriweather loved using his helmet. Our next guy preferred helmets off. The fierce defensive tackle stood at 6'6", 335 pounds. He was All-Pro twice in his 10-year career and was constantly in the backfield taking down quarterbacks and running backs, and he didn't care how he did it. Albert Haynesworth was known for some dirty tactics, but even if he played mostly clean games his whole career, it was this one infamous moment that would put him on every list of dirtiest players. In 2006, Haynesworth and his Titans were trying to stop the Cowboys from running in a touchdown early in the third quarter. Julius Jones made it in, and Haynesworth took his frustrations out on offensive lineman Andre Garrod.
Right there.
Oh my gosh.
After removing his helmet, already an unsportsmanlike penalty, he then proceeded to stomp on his head. That got him ejected from the game and suspended for the next 5. This was the longest suspension for a violent act on the field at that time. It also cost Haynesworth $190,000. But this next guy played the game as if he was going to actually earn money by hurting opponents. If you are squeamish, Jack Tatum is not for you. Nicknamed the Assassin, he made one of the biggest hits ever in Super Bowl history.
11 to go. Right down the middle again. Oh, did they hit it? Held on. Helmet that went off. I don't know how he held on to that. Sammy White.
Jack Tatum knocked memories out of players' heads. His goal was to hit them so hard that they couldn't get up on their own. His strategy worked. He and his Raiders won Super Bowl 11, and Sammy White couldn't remember if he was a Raider or a Viking. That's not even his worst hit. In a preseason game against the Patriots, budding wide receiver Darryl Stingley leapt for a pass over the middle, and Tatum laid him out with a brutal hit. But Stingley didn't get up. The hit paralyzed him, ending his career.
Happened. Went in the locker room after, and Tate was sitting there smoking a cigarette. And Madden came over and leaned in and he said, "Are you all right?" Now, I'll never forget, he took the cigarette out of his mouth and he looked at him and he said, "Why wouldn't I be?"
It wasn't just Tatum's dirty style of play, it was his nonchalant attitude about it. He didn't care about the consequences of his hits. Everyone knew what they were in for when they stepped on the field with Tatum on the other side.
But I will never apologize for the way I play football. That just won't happen.
From one hard-hitting safety to another, Rodney Harrison is commonly known to be one of the dirtiest players of all time. He's even got the hardware to prove it. We're not talking about his 2 Super Bowls. We're talking about how he's won the NFL's Dirtiest Player Award 3 times. Awarded to him in 2004 and 2006 by fellow players, and in 2008 by coaches. He enjoyed demolishing players and talking as much trash as he could.
Watching that tape, man, you gotta look at this dude and say, "Oh, he is garbage. Like, we should really tear him apart."
He delivered so many helmet-to-helmet hits that the NFL probably had pre-addressed envelopes ready to send his fines.
How much were you fined in your career?
A little over $300,000 after tax.
That includes his most expensive fine ever, which was on a fan favorite, Jerry Rice. If you were matched up against Harrison, he hated you.
But Jerry Rice did that slant, and I got a chance to hit him. And I tell you, Dan, I would have spent $500,000 on that just to get a chance to knock his freaking head off.
Harrison got his Dirtiest Player awards from within the league, but the next one got his from a major sports magazine. You might not be as familiar with Conrad Dobler, but you should be. His hardware outranks that of Harrison's. Dobler was a guard that played for several teams from 1972 to 1981. And in 1977, Sports Illustrated dubbed him the NFL's dirtiest player. How does someone earn this honor? Well, you can start by having gross nicknames for your hits.
It was nice to run into someone and hit him so hard. I used to call it a snot bubbler. That's when you hit him so hard, you just see that little bubble of snot come out of his nose there.
It didn't stop with snot bubblers. He also spat on injured players. He punched defenders in the stomach when they tried to swat passes. He was even accused of biting. And there's plenty of video evidence of Dobler kicking players.
You know, a lot of people had talked about the leg whips and things like this, but I always thought we should have gotten points for that because I thought those were great athletic moves.
But Merlin Olsen didn't find anything classical about the time Conrad Dobler kicked him in the head. Dobler seemed to have a few screws loose in the way he approached the game. He was not just dirty, he was crazy too. Remember Mean Joe Green? That was a guy no one messed with. But of course, Dobler punched him. And if anyone tagged Dobler in a game, bad idea.
I'm going to find you before the game's over. We're going to trade this one off.
He was always on the lookout for trouble.
That's J.J. Stokes, I think, talking to Bill Romanowski. Ooh, and there is a real lack of social graces.
Maybe Bill Romanowski was out there trying to cool sweaty players with his spit. He may have been the second coming of Conrad Dobler because he was also a kicker. While in Philly, Romanowski and the Eagles were trying to hold a goal line stand. Larry Centers of the Cardinals dove forward but couldn't get in. And while on the ground, Romanowski was still going at him, delivering a foot to his head. He once broke Kerry Collins' jaw with a helmet-to-helmet hit. In another insane-looking tackle, he dislocated Shannon Sharp's elbow, pinning his arm down and falling on it with all his weight. The linebacker wreaked havoc in the NFL for 16 years, from San Francisco to Philly to Denver, and by 2002 to Oakland. He arrived there the same year as rookie tight end Marcus Williams, and apparently the rookie didn't know about Bill Romanowski. In their 2003 training camp, he punched Marcus Williams so hard, Williams suffered massive injuries that caused him to retire. Forget about the NFL fines. Williams sued Romanowski for $300,000 and won. Romanowski was one of the most malicious players in the NFL until our next guy came along.
Rodgers fires, and then a flag, and it's because of that hit.
6'1", 255 pounds of pure mean.
There's a new rule in the NFL. They're implementing this season to protect the player who can't protect himself. Burfict is a peep.
No nicknames. The name Vontaze Burfict was enough to scare players. Burfict was an excellent linebacker who couldn't get out of his own way. In 2013, he was an all-pro who led the league in tackles, but then he also started leading the league in helmet-to-helmet hits and dirty plays. Not to mention the hit that caused Antonio Brown's downward spiral. After 7 years in Cincinnati, he went to Oakland. Maybe a change of scenery would do him good.
Vontaze Burfict tossed out of the game. Jack Doyle, the tight end, had made a catch. He was down on the ground.
Guess not. The NFL had it with Burfict. He was suspended the rest of the 2019 season, 12 games. That was the longest suspension for an on-field action. In fact, that hit on Doyle was his last play in the NFL, ever. Over the course of his career, Vontaze Burfict was fined $4.2 million. It's hard to imagine anyone surpassing Burfict as the dirtiest player of all time. At the very least, no one should incur more fines than him. Thanks for watching. If you liked our video, be sure to subscribe and check out our other videos on the screen.